Have you ever noticed a loved one, perhaps a spouse or a longtime friend, suddenly undergo a strange change in personality? Someone who was once gentle becomes irritable, or someone who used to be thoughtful suddenly seems indifferent and detached. Many assume this is simply a sign of aging or just a temporary emotional phase. But the truth can be far more serious. Frontotemporal dementia, a condition far less known than Alzheimer's, is in fact especially dangerous. It doesn't usually begin with forgetting names or losing track of memories, as many people might think. Instead, it often starts with very small changes in behavior and personality. And because of this, many families mistake it for something else, missing the critical window for early detection and timely intervention. You've probably heard about actor Bruce Willis. His diagnosis of frontotemporal dementia has brought much greater public attention to this condition in the United States. But beyond the spotlight, tens of thousands of families across America are facing this difficult reality every single day. In today's video, we'll explore 10 early warning signs of frontotemporal dementia that you should never ignore. Understanding these signs could give you or your loved one the chance for an earlier diagnosis, a better care plan, and, most importantly, more meaningful years together with family. Sign number one of the earliest and most noticeable signs of frontotemporal dementia is a change in personality. This may sound simple, but it's an extremely important signal that many families tend to overlook. Imagine someone who used to be calm and reserved suddenly becoming overly outgoing, talkative, or even a little impulsive. Or someone who was once thoughtful and attentive with their family beginning to act indifferent, distant, and no longer showing concern for others' feelings. In some cases, a person who used to be passionate about their work and fully committed to their career slowly loses motivation, withdrawing from activities they once loved. These changes don't happen in just a day or a week. They usually creep in little by little, making loved ones feel that something seems off, but it's hard to put into words. And so they're often brushed aside with explanations like, it's probably just age, maybe it's work stress, or people's moods just change over time. In reality, though, this could be the brain sending out a warning that something abnormal is taking place. The key difference here is consistency. All of us have moments of joy, sadness, or irritability. But when a personality shift becomes repetitive, lasts for months, and, most importantly, stands in clear contrast to who they used to be, it's a red flag worth paying close attention to. Remember, your intuition, the feeling that my loved one just doesn't seem like themselves anymore, is often very accurate, even if it's difficult to explain in words. Trusting that instinct and carefully observing daily behavior changes may be the very first step in detecting frontotemporal dementia earlier. Sign number two, a decline in empathy, the very trait that holds families together. Someone who once listened, shared, and comforted others may now seem distant, cold, or even unmoved by the sadness or joy of loved ones. For example, when a family member feels upset, the person with the condition might sit silently, offering no words of comfort. In more troubling cases, they may even laugh at completely inappropriate moments, such as when someone falls or experiences pain. These reactions can leave family members confused, even hurt, as if they are living with a different person. What's important to understand is that this is not intentional. These changes stem from damage in the parts of the brain that regulate emotions and empathy. The individual no longer has the same ability to feel another person's joy or sorrow, even though their memory may still seem normal in the early stages. This loss of empathy doesn't just affect personal relationships. It can make families feel as though they are slowly losing a part of their loved one. A husband who was once gentle and caring may now seem indifferent to his wife's emotions. A mother who used to be warm and protective may suddenly appear cold in the face of her child's sadness. When confronted with this, family members often feel either anger or deep sadness. But it's important to remember, this is not a choice. It's a symptom of the disease, an important warning sign of frontotemporal dementia. If the first sign is personality change, and the second is a loss of empathy, the third often creates some of the most awkward situations, inappropriate social behavior. People with frontotemporal dementia gradually lose the social filters that help us behave properly in public. They may say rude things, make offensive remarks, or bring up sensitive topics in front of others, comments they would never have made before. At times, they might suddenly break the serious mood of a gathering with an ill-timed joke, leaving their family embarrassed and apologizing on their behalf. And it's not only speech, their actions may also become unusual. They might take food off someone else's plate in a restaurant, touch strangers without permission, or act impulsively in public. Such behaviors can leave loved ones feeling embarrassed, uncomfortable, and even fearful about bringing them along to social events. Once again, it's important to remember, they are not doing this on purpose. It's not rebellion, nor is it poor manners. These behaviors are the result of damage to the parts of the brain that control restraint and judgment. The person no longer has the ability to stop themselves before acting the way they once did. When faced with this, many families choose to limit outings in order to avoid embarrassment. But doing so can sometimes leave the person isolated, cutting them off from social connections that are still very important. Instead, understanding the cause and learning how to respond, such as preparing yourself mentally, offering gentle explanations to friends, or adjusting the environment, can help reduce the discomfort. In the next part, we'll move on to sign number 4, poor judgment and lack of insight, a symptom that can have serious consequences for both finances and family safety. The person may begin making impulsive, unreasonable decisions, especially when it comes to money and other important matters of daily life. You may notice that someone who used to be very careful with money suddenly becomes overly reckless. They might impulsively buy expensive items they don't need, donate a large sum to an unfamiliar organization, or even slip into gambling. In many cases, they can easily fall victim to phone or internet scams, something they used to be very cautious about. Poor judgment isn't limited to finances. It can also show up in everyday choices. A person may dress inappropriately for the weather, drive in unsafe conditions, or engage in risky behaviors they once would have avoided. For families, this can lead to serious consequences, ranging from financial losses to potential threats to safety and even life itself. What makes this stage challenging is that, in the early phases, the person themselves often doesn't realize there's a problem. If you try to step in, they may react with anger, feeling insulted or controlled. That's why handling this situation requires care, protecting the family's safety and finances without breaking the patient's trust. One approach many families use is to limit financial control early on. For example, allowing the person to have a small daily spending allowance while larger decisions are managed by loved ones. This not only helps prevent serious risks, but also preserves a sense of independence. Sign number 5. One of the most easily misunderstood symptoms of frontotemporal dementia is apathy or loss of interest. The person gradually loses motivation and no longer cares about activities they once deeply enjoyed or were committed to. For instance, someone who used to love gardening might let weeds overrun the yard without concern. A person who once enjoyed meeting friends may now decline every invitation, preferring to sit on the couch for hours doing nothing. Even joys tied closely to family, such as playing with grandchildren or taking a walk with a spouse, may no longer hold any interest. The biggest difference between apathy and depression lies in emotion. People with depression often feel sadness, guilt, or self-blame. In contrast, someone with frontotemporal dementia showing apathy usually doesn't display negative emotions. They aren't sad or upset. They simply don't care anymore. This is why many families mistake it for laziness or neglect, rather than recognizing it as a clinical warning sign. For loved ones, this apathy can be incredibly frustrating. It can feel as though you're living with a completely different person, no longer energetic, no longer passionate, and sometimes not even caring for themselves. But remember, this is not a choice. It is a direct result of changes happening in the brain. Recognizing this unusual lack of interest early is very important because it can prompt families to seek medical evaluation sooner rather than mistaking it for ordinary psychological issues. Sign number 6. One of the more typical and recognizable characteristics of frontotemporal dementia is the appearance of obsessive or repetitive behaviors. These are not ordinary habits, but actions that become rigid and repeated every single day. to the point of causing fatigue for both the patient and the family. You might see someone suddenly insisting on walking the same route at the exact same time every day. If anyone suggests changing direction or schedule, they may become upset or even angry. Some develop strange interests, such as collecting scraps of paper, plastic boxes, or seemingly worthless items, and then piling them up in their room without being able to throw them away. Others form rituals around meals. For example, only accepting a single dish day after day, or demanding that food be arranged and eaten in a particular order. This often puts families in a difficult position, because if you try to stop or change these routines, the patient may become restless, irritable, or even agitated. In reality, these behaviors stem from disruptions in the brain, areas that once allowed them to be flexible and adaptable. Now they no longer have the ability to adjust their actions to fit the situation as before. For caregivers, these obsessive behaviors can sometimes feel irritating, even overwhelming. But instead of trying to eliminate them completely, a gentler approach is to allow them within safe limits. If walking the same route each day does no harm, let them do it. If they only want to eat the same dish, find ways to prepare that food differently to provide balanced nutrition. These small adjustments can reduce stress while helping the patient feel secure and stable. From a medical perspective, obsessive and repetitive behaviors are clear signs that the parts of the brain responsible for inhibition and planning have been affected. This is not simple stubbornness or being difficult, as many families may think, but rather a warning symptom of frontotemporal dementia. Recognizing this early helps loved ones shift their perspective, respond with more patience, and, most importantly, understand that they are facing an illness, not a fault of the patient. Sign number 7, changes in eating habits. This doesn't just affect physical health, it's also one of the earliest warning signs families can often notice. Many people with this condition begin to experience unusual food cravings, especially for sweets. Someone who once ate in moderation may suddenly consume candy, ice cream, and soda nonstop, unable to control themselves. In some cases, they may overeat, forgetting that they've just had a meal, leading to rapid weight gain. On the other hand, some lose interest in food altogether, needing constant reminders to eat, or accepting only one particular dish day after day. This change often comes with a loss of the normal sense of fullness. A person may eat 2 or 3 times the usual amount of food without ever feeling satisfied. For caregivers, this can be both exhausting and worrisome, since it puts the individual at risk for serious health problems such as diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, or sudden weight loss if they stop eating altogether. For families, coping with these changes is far from easy. Mealtimes, once a moment of bonding and connection, can become a source of stress, filled with arguments, pressure, or constant worry over unpredictable weight changes. However, it's important to remember this isn't the person's choice. It's the result of brain damage affecting the ability to control eating behavior. The best way to respond is by creating safe eating routines, keeping healthy foods readily available, limiting the amount of sweets in the home, and maintaining regular structured mealtimes. Sign number 8. One of the more subtle but very telling signs is a decline in the ability to handle complex tasks. In the early stages, basic memory often remains intact. They may still remember names, addresses, and even drive to familiar stores. But when faced with activities that require multiple steps of thinking, they begin to struggle noticeably. For example, someone who once excelled at cooking may suddenly get confused with a simple recipe, forgetting basic steps. A person who used to manage the family's finances might now make calculation errors, miss bill payments, or lose the ability to plan spending wisely. In the workplace, individuals who were once highly regarded may start making frequent small mistakes, find it hard to adapt to new systems or technologies, and generally slow down in their performance. What's particularly striking is that many patients try to cover up these difficulties. They may offer excuses, avoid complex tasks altogether, or hand responsibilities over to others. As a result, families often don't notice right away, only gradually sensing that something just isn't the same anymore. For loved ones, this is an important sign to watch for, because the ability to manage complex tasks is the foundation of independence. When a person begins to lose this skill, they gradually lose the ability to care for themselves. Early recognition and timely intervention, such as breaking tasks into smaller steps or creating a simpler environment, can help extend their independence while also easing the burden on family members. Next, we come to sign number 9, language problems, a symptom that often makes communication difficult and leaves families feeling increasingly disconnected from their loved one. Language is the bridge that allows us to connect, share, and express emotions. When that bridge begins to weaken, both the person and their family can feel stuck and slowly drift apart. At first, the person may experience only minor difficulties, like struggling to find the right word, similar to the feeling of, "It's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't say it." Over time, however, this becomes more frequent. They may start using the wrong words, for example, calling a table a chair, or stringing sentences together in a disorganized way that's difficult for others to follow. In the more advanced stages, the person may gradually lose the meaning of words. Less commonly used vocabulary disappears first, and over time, even familiar words begin to feel foreign. Some individuals lose much of their desire to converse, becoming quiet, giving only short replies, or simply echoing what others say instead of offering independent responses. For families, this is often one of the most heartbreaking signs. A spouse or child who once shared stories and laughter with you may now fall silent or speak in ways that no longer make sense. The emotional bond built through language begins to fracture, leaving loved ones with the painful feeling that they are slowly losing a part of the person they cherish. Still, there are ways to keep communication alive, using gestures, eye contact, pictures, or simple words instead of complex sentences. With patience, creativity, and understanding, families can help preserve that vital connection, even when language itself is no longer whole. Sign Dierger 10, lack of self-awareness. While family members may clearly see that something is wrong, the person themselves often believes everything is normal. They may admit to small difficulties, like forgetting a word or struggling in a particular situation, but they don't recognize the bigger picture, that their personality, behavior, and language skills have changed significantly. This lack of insight often leads to negative reactions when others point it out. They may get angry, feel insulted, or offer countless excuses to justify their actions. For families, this can be one of the toughest challenges. You may want them to see a doctor, but they refuse, insisting there's nothing wrong with me. You may try to adjust daily routines, but they resist, believing you're being overly controlling. This lack of cooperation isn't stubbornness. It's because their brain no longer has the ability to reflect on itself. This also makes diagnosing and treating frontotemporal dementia much more challenging. In many cases, it's the family who must take the initiative, carefully observing, noting symptoms, and persistently encouraging the person to see a doctor. That's why family awareness becomes such a critical factor in early detection. As difficult as it may be, understanding that this lack of self-awareness is a symptom of the disease, not something intentional, can help reduce tension and foster compassion. The reality is they no longer have the ability to see themselves the way they once did. Diagnosing frontotemporal dementia is rarely straightforward. Early on, it's often mistaken for depression, stress, or even a personality disorder because the behavioral and emotional changes can look so similar. Some families even assume their loved one is simply going through a midlife crisis. This confusion often delays proper diagnosis for years. To get an accurate result, doctors typically combine several approaches. Gathering detailed accounts from family about personality changes, conducting neuropsychological tests, and using brain imaging techniques such as MRI or PET scans to observe damage in the frontal and temporal lobes. Still, because FTD is less common than Alzheimer's, not every doctor has deep experience with it, making it especially important to seek out a neurologist who specializes in cognitive disorders. At present, there is no cure for FTD. However, there are many ways to manage symptoms and improve quality of life. Certain medications can help reduce agitation or obsessive behaviors. Speech and behavioral therapies can support better communication, helping patients maintain their connection with family. Most importantly, early diagnosis gives loved ones time to prepare, reorganize daily life, and cherish the meaningful moments they still have together. While frontotemporal dementia directly changes the patient, its heaviest impact often falls on caregivers and family members. Each day, they must cope with unusual behaviors, thoughtless remarks, and sometimes puzzling reactions from the very person they love most. This doesn't just cause emotional strain, it can also lead to profound mental and physical exhaustion. Caregivers often carry what feels like a double loss. On one hand, their loved one is still sitting right in front of them. On the other, the familiar personality, warmth, and behaviors of that person have completely changed. Many spouses describe it as if they are now living with a stranger, while children are left confused, wondering why their parent no longer seems like the same person they once knew. Beyond this emotional weight, the physical and financial burden can be overwhelming. Caregivers are responsible for meals, sleep schedules, medications, finances, and even the safety of the patient. Sleepless nights, sudden emergencies, and the social isolation that often comes with caregiving can quickly push them toward exhaustion. That is why caring for someone with frontotemporal dementia is not only about the patient, it is about the entire family system. Caregivers need rest, they need community support, and most importantly, they must remember to care for themselves. When their own health and well-being are protected, they have the strength to continue walking this difficult road with their loved one. And so we have now explored the 10 early warning signs of frontotemporal dementia. Each sign may appear quietly, almost unnoticed at first, but when you look at them together, they form a very clear picture. The brain is sending out a cry for help. The most important thing to remember is this: these changes are not a matter of choice. Your loved one isn't intentionally becoming distant, behaving strangely, or trying to lose their ability to communicate. Every shift you see comes from damage inside the brain. And when these signs are recognized early, the family has a much greater chance to prepare. Whether that means creating a thoughtful care plan, organizing financial matters, or simply making the most of the precious time you still have together. If you found today's video helpful, please take a moment to press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way you'll never miss important health insights designed especially for people over 60. And don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share this video with your friends and family. You never know who might be quietly searching for answers right now. I'd also love to hear from you directly. Have you noticed any of these warning signs in a loved one or a close friend? If so, please share your experience in the comments below. And if you'd like to show your support for the channel, just type a simple yes in the comments. It lets us know this information has truly reached and helped you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.